Thank you.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday to everyone. Ann and I would like to welcome everyone to our November 19th Licensure Subcommittee meeting. And before I forget it, we would like to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. Hope that each of you have some time off, maybe from work, to be able to relax your minds, your bodies, and just to reflect on all the things that we have to be thankful for. So happy Thanksgiving to everyone. I also like to take a moment, Ann and I, just to thank you for your input and dedication to the subcommittee that you put in up to this point. I was just glancing back through our calendar and the number of meetings we have had, and many of you have put over 10 hours of time, 10 to 15 hours or more into our subcommittee, and it's been greatly appreciated, as we know this has been a big task up to this point. So we'll move on into our agenda today. And first off, we want to approve our agenda for the meeting. And I think Kim has sent that out to everyone earlier. So I would entertain a motion and a second to approve our agenda for our November 19th meeting.
This is Vivian Covington, so moved.
Thank you, Vivian. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
This is Sarah Koenig. I'll give a second.
Thank you, Sarah. Also, our last meeting was held on October 20th, and Miss Ann led that meeting for us. And I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from October 20th.
So moved, Connie.
Thank you, Connie. Do we have a second?
Amanda Maxwell, second.
Thank you, Amanda. All right, as we move into our agenda this morning, just want to talk just for a minute about the purpose.
Do we need to vote, Wesley?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I'm getting way ahead of myself. I apologize. We do need to take a vote. Let's go back to the agenda since we had a motion and a second on that. All in favor of approving that agenda, please say aye.
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 We'll also move to the minutes. We had a motion and a second to approve those minutes, so we'll also take a vote on that. So all in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, thank you, everyone. It's Friday, and Lord, it's been busy here in our school district, so my mind is circling all over the place this morning, so I appreciate your patience. Also, the purpose of today's meeting is, as indicated on the agenda, is we want to go back and once again just review the measures that we have discussed over the last several meetings. And our overall goal today is to take a vote on these measures as a subcommittee as to if we would like to recommend that these measures be used in the North Carolina Pathways to Excellence model that we are very familiar with. And as we know, there are, with each of these measures, we've talked about the pros and cons and things to consider with each of these measures. But our overall goal is to say, okay, yes, as a subcommittee, we would like to include this measure in the model in some form or capacity with the considerations and the feedback that the subcommittee has provided. Or basically, no, as a subcommittee, we do not think this measure needs to be included in the model. And I know Ann will talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. But moving forward, our understanding is that the co-chairs of each of the subcommittee will begin to take the data and the feedback that they have been provided from their subcommittees and begin to put a draft together of the Pathways to Excellence model. And so our information obviously will be very important to the advancement committee as we look at these measures and where to begin to place them in the model. So, Kim, before we start reviewing the model, do you want to talk a minute about how the voting will work and what folks will see on their screen and maybe directions on what they need to do before I turn it over to Ann to start going through those measures again?
Sure. So we're going to vote through polling.
and we're going to vote one measure at a time. And so after we have the discussion about a particular measure, then I'm going to send a poll out with about 3 minutes for people to make the decision as to, yes, you want this measure with considerations that were put together during the October meeting. As part of it, those conditions or the recommendations that the subcommittee decided on in October, or no. So it's going to be a yes or no question. And all it's going to say is, for instance, student surveys. And then for A, it'll say yes with considerations, or B, no. And you just choose one or the other. And you'll have about 3 minutes to complete the poll. And so you'll receive one of those after we go over each measure, or Ann or Wesley goes over each measure. And so then we can see what the final consensus is on each of those measures.
And I know Kim and her crew have worked to put summaries together that I'm trying to remember, Kim, I think you sent those out already of the notes for each of the measures.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So I know they'll be also included in today's presentation when Ann begins to walk us through those. But just keep in mind that, we're not really voting on a specific measure to be used in a specific place. We're just actually voting on whether this measure will be included in the pathways model. And of course, as the drafts are being graded, there'll be multiple opportunities for additional feedback and decisions on whether that measure is appropriate for a specific place, based on where the advancement committee may choose to put those as we work together as co-chairs. So, Ms. Ann, I will turn the next part over to you.
All right. Thank you, Wesley. And thank you, everyone, that could be here today. So we're going to begin by we're not going to look at the PowerPoint. Well, we are going to look at the PowerPoint, but we're going to look at our notes as well. So we're going to be talking about a minimum of 6 measures today. These are the same measures that we got in our groups and worked through in our last time. So student surveys, micro-credentials, licensure exams, observational measures, measures of student learning, and portfolios performance tests. So these are the 6 areas and this is the same set of measures that we talked about. We also had some discussion around master's degrees. So that is not one of these measures that we've talked about, but we might want to talk about that at the end. So we're going to pull up each one. We're going to start with student surveys. So Kim, if you could please pull up the pros, cons, considerations. Give Kim here a minute. She's got to run the poll. She's got to pull up the stuff. So thank you, Kim. Let me know when we should be seeing it. Okay, so this is the Consolidated Worksheets handout that you received from us. And what we did is we took all of your things that you had written and put it into, like a mini report, so to say. So we have, to begin, students' surveys. So we have our pros of student surveys, our cons of student surveys, questions for consideration underneath. So to begin, for each of these measures, does anyone have anything they feel like we need to add or anything that's missing in terms of our information?
I'd like clarification on number 3, licensure exams, because we have always been told from DPI that TPA is considered a licensure exam, but yet it's listed with portfolios/performance tests, and it's not, TPA is sort of mentioned there, but that information is more about portfolios. So I just want to know where we're going to consider EdTPA, and if it's under the portfolio one, I think that needs to be fleshed out a little more.
Okay, all right. So thank you, Vivian. So just for student surveys, but I'll make a note about that when we get there, okay?
Sorry, Ann.
It's okay. It's good to always have notes for the future. So anything regarding student surveys?
And this is Jill Kamnitz. I would add, just looking through these, the column that says surveys are challenging to employ for teachers of very young or nonverbal students. While that is a negative, we do have other data for those grade levels. And it seems to me that a pro of the student surveys would be its available data for older, for middle school, high school teachers, that sometimes we have less to work with there.
Okay.
Particularly high school.
We could add that. We could add that, Jill.
And another con, I think, would be just sort of the current climate around student surveys.
Okay, current climate. And then a pro is that it's another source for high school feedback, right? Student feedback.
Where we don't have as much information on student growth and proficiency as we do in the K-8.
Where's less evidence student growth?
Dr. Bullock, this is Tom Tomberlin. Could we possibly say secondary?
Yes.
Because, yes, middle school students would.
We do have the data for those, Tom. Yes, you're right.
Tom, what do you define as secondary?
So generally, K-5 is considered elementary, and 6 through 12 is considered secondary. But we can define that in our notes if we want to. 6 through 12, yeah.
Okay. Because I call that middle and secondary, so I just was curious what you were. Yeah. Okay.
And this is Kim. I'm sorry if I interrupted. This is Kim Creamer from Catawba College. And with student surveys, I mean, we live at the college level, in a world of student evaluations at the end of every semester. So, I do see and know how, that they're used. But I know a big piece of that on our end in our evaluation is us reflecting on those in our annual reviews of ourselves and our, when you come up for tenure and those kinds of things. So I don't know if that's going to be a piece of this or should be a piece of this, more effective when it's tangible. It says it provides tangible feedback for teacher reflection and improvement, but will that reflection and improvement be included as a piece of the evaluation? Does that make sense?
Yeah, Kim, why don't we add that under questions for consideration, something like, or recommendations. I
just think the student surveys alone, without the seeing how the teacher is reflecting on them, right, and either improving or sustaining instruction is it just becomes numbers and comments without that. So,
yeah. We'll add it right there.
So, Dr. Bullock, I have a question about the whole process. So, the vote here on including a measure is whether we would include it as an option for a teacher, not whether it is. We're not creating a thing like this is the thing. We're creating a menu of options for teachers. Is that correct?
We're not even doing that at this point, Tom. We're saying that these are things that could be considered as measures moving forward. Right.
So I just want to clarify that this is, we're voting to include this as a possibility for a teacher, not that a teacher would have to use this thing.
We're voting, well, we're not even at that level.
Right.
I get you. We are saying that we are voting to say these are this student surveys, for example, is something that we want to take forward for consideration in this model in some way. Yeah, that we would approve that being used in this model in some way.
Gotcha. Thank you.
With these parameters. So it might be a choice, it might be the single thing. It depends on, that's the next level from what I understand. We're not saying it's going to be, we're giving our considerations, our recommendations, etc. So that's it. That's all we're doing today. We're saying these things can move forward from our subcommittee. Does anybody else have questions on that?
Well, I think I was kind of on the same lines with Dr. Tomlin, trying to get clarity on exactly what we were voting on. And I think you kind of answered that, because going back to the student surveys, when you look at the information that's provided, and then when you go down to the recommendations, the pros and cons and the recommendations, it states that this should not be considered for rigor, maybe just for the pedagogy, but not for the rigor or the content. So I guess my question is, when we're looking at licensure, when we're talking about the student surveys, you're just saying that this is something that we may consider, not where it lies at this point.
That's correct. And these are our questions that we have. These are the things from y'all, right? These are the recommendations that we have for consideration if this is a measure that moves forward. Like, we don't think, our group does not think that it's suited for 1 and 2, better suited for 3, 4, and 5. So when those conversations happen, we don't want this information to get lost, right? That our thought processes are these things, right? So we're not saying that it's got to be in here or that it doesn't have to be in here. We're saying we feel like this is a suitable measure or not. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, no, sure. Okay. It's good to know what we're voting for. So believe me, Wesley, Kim, and I've had lots of conversations on what we're exactly voting for. So this is a good conversation. So to summarize, measure 1, student surveys. We have our pros, our cons, our questions for consideration, and some general recommendations. But what we're voting on is if we want to consider this as a possible measure with these considerations, meaning the pros, cons, questions, and recommendations, or do you not want to consider this as a measure? Yes, all of this would be included with it. So this is like our working document in terms of our report, right? The pros, the cons, the questions for consideration, and the recommendations. And recommendations here is not around, it's around if we say this measure is going to be used, these are things to consider or things we recommend around the measure. Okay, so I want to make sure everybody knows what we're voting on. Do we move this measure forward or not as a consideration? All right. Any questions on what you're going to vote on? And we're going to do it for every measure. All right, well, let's see if we can get through this vote. So so there are 2 choices for the vote. Yes, we would recommend this for a measure with considerations. So it'll say yes with considerations, meaning all of these things, or a flat no. And that will be the poll. Yes with considerations, meaning all of these pros, cons, questions, recommendations, or no. So Kim, for your 3rd hat trick of the day, you should see a poll. It has 2 boxes, and you're going to make your choice, and then you're going to hit submit. So you should be voting now. Kim, just let us know when we're ready.
We still have 57 seconds. People are still answering.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Bullock, would you like me to share the poll results?
I would. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so we have 7 who voted yes, 7 who voted no, and
So it's a
7 who did
tie.
not. What?
It's a tie.
Okay. All right. We didn't talk about what to do if we had a tie. Okay, let's move forward.
So
Back to that.
this is Tom. I'm sorry. I just want to be clear that I and probably other DPI staff members who are on this are probably not voting. So that would account for some of the non-votes in that. But I think that's a little too high to account just for DPI folks.
And this is Catherine Costellos. I didn't vote as well because I felt like it was more for everyone else because I'm with apprenticeship. And so I did exclude myself.
Does that 33% non-voting, is that of the people on this call or of the committee as a whole?
The people on this call. Are there 21 people on this call?
This is Sarah Koenig. Can Dr. further elaborate on why staff from DPI and others are refraining from voting?
So this is Tom Tomberlin. We see ourselves as administrative support for these subcommittees and not voting members.
Understood. Thank you.
Yep.
So I'm just going to count here. So there's Tom, and there's SBE video, and there's SBE audio.
There's 20 people. That's counting everybody, not counting SBE audio or SBE video.
Is there anyone that didn't vote because they didn't know how to vote that wants to vote? Okay.
So, Lee, let me address Lee's comment. I'm sorry, I was a little too broad in my topic there. So you're here as basically a subject matter expert who happens to be employed by DPI. I want to distinguish that from the staff that works for educator recruitment and support. We are functioning as the administrative team for PEPSC, and we're not. So my staff is not consider itself voting members, but Lee, you would be a voting member. Yes.
So this is Tamika Walker Kelly, NCA. I have concerns about this process because majority of the people who are typically on this meeting are not here. And then a significant portion of people who are on this call can't vote. So I worry about us taking votes on which one of these measures to put forward towards the larger PEPSC committee, and worry about whether or not this is actual valid data to be even submit as a recommendation.
So Kim, how many people total are on this committee that would be quote voting members?
Maybe around 30.
So,
I would have to go back and actually check, but I'm estimating.
Yeah, was that 30 with DPI representation, or is that 30?
I've taken out DPI representation. I could be slightly off. It could be upper 20s.
so can we stop and look at that, please?
This is super. I just want to make a record. I feel like we were in this meeting. We were sent the agenda. We were voting. And I actually had to clear my schedule. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been.
I'm sorry, you are really breaking up. So let's try to everybody mute, and maybe that will help us be able to hear you.
Am I okay now?
Yes.
Okay. This is Sarah Koenig. I just want to make a notation for the record. We all knew this meeting was coming up. We all were sent the date. We were sent the agenda. We did know the importance of this. I do understand the concerns with some people not being available, but I myself had another meeting scheduled, but I cleared that because of them knowing the importance of this meeting. I just wanted to make that personal comment for the record.
Thank you very much. I will also say that we have not, and this is just a comment, that we have not asked for quorum for any of our other votes that we've done. Not that I'm trying to say we should do something different here, but I will say that as a subcommittee co-chair.
I will just note, it's noted, but I don't think it would be appropriate given the amount of people on this meeting.
This is Sarah. I also want to note that our fellow committee members, their feelings from the breakout sessions were compiled together with the document that we are looking at, and those were decided as a whole in the breakdown groups, correct, when giving the pros, cons, and recommendations.
Right. So the breakout groups, and then in the second round, you could go to any of the measures that were, laid out and add comments individually or as your group. And then there was a whole week that we sent the document out and said you left it open, so to say, for anyone to add any further comments. So I do feel like that we did. And then of course we're also doing it in this meeting as well.
Dr. Bullock, it would be 32 voting members.
Okay, and we have 14.
And I think we go ahead and move through the process, and then we can discuss maybe afterwards of whether we feel we have, enough final, decision making from the committee, and then talk about maybe next steps if needed.
Okay, sounds good. We can do that. So let's move through what we're doing and see where we land. So the first one is 7 to 7, right? And then let's move to the second measure, which is, I'm sorry, Kim, can you up or down so I can see the title of it? Micro-credentials or micro-credentialing. So we have pros, cons, questions for considerations, and what we're calling recommendations are in this. So I'll open it for discussion. Or things to add, questions.
This is Virginia. I really feel that micro-credentials would be a very helpful tool to assist our initially licensed teachers if they are having, if they're unable to pass their content test by 1 or 2 points. And because as a licensure specialist, we see that all the time. We see teachers that are doing a really great job, particularly at our high priority schools. And for some reason, they are just not able to be passing those tests. And a lot of times they miss it by 1 or 2 points. And I think that this would really be a very good measure to help with that.
Okay, I think that might be a good thing to add under questions for consideration. That we could add, could micro-credentials be used as for candidates that are, quote, let's put this in quotes, close to passing to the licensure test to make up the difference. Virginia, is that okay? That language?
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you.
Sure.
Dr. Bullock?
Yes.
Can I make a comment about that? Or may I make a comment about that? I'm sure I can.
You can.
Thanks. So Virginia, I hear what you're saying, but my concern about framing it that way is then you're creating a situation where you see the standardized test as the gold standard, and this is something almost there but not quite. And I really feel like the idea behind the work you're doing here is to create a set of equivalent options for teachers where not any one of them looks or has the kind of specter of being less than. So we don't want to be in a situation where we have a class of teachers that, oh, you are a micro-credential approved teacher, so you're less than someone who passed a standardized test. And I'm not objecting to the idea that we need something for folks for whom that the licensure exam is not a good indicator of their ability. What I'm suggesting is couching it as as one is the ideal, and these other measures are somehow a lesser pathway. And I think this group really needs to think about that in terms of crafting these measures that you're going to use.
So we talked about this, what Virginia just said. We've talked about this before in this committee as a viability, that if someone tries one pathway or one evidence, whatever you want to call it, licensure test, and they aren't successful in that pathway, is there an alternative way for them to show if they've already done it? And what could be something in the middle? So I do think that this is real, and I know it's real from my colleagues in personnel. So I don't think of it as lesser, as more of an alternative. That would be my response.
But so I hear you, Dr. Bullock. So my question is, it is an alternative if the licensure exam is attempted. Is that correct?
Right. So a lot of people, correct. That's the way this is written for this particular consideration.
And I think it's more accurate to say that's what I'm raising a question about is.
We haven't gotten the licensure test yet. So this is for this one.
Right. I'm talking about the idea of establishing a pathway that has primacy in this model. That is the intent of this group to say there is this this is the way everybody has to go through, and only if you fail that route are you able to avail alternatives. I think that's a fundamental question I'm asking about the way we're talking about micro-credentials right here.
We're not talking about micro-credentials in that way overall. We're talking about micro-credentialing. The way I understand that what Virginia has said, which I appreciate her speaking up, is that this could be one way we use micro-credentialing. Not the only way, but one way.
I got you.
I mean, that's what I'm talking about exactly. I mean, we had a very robust discussion about it when we discussed the micro-credentials, and during the presentations, I've been in all the meetings, and I believe that these were presented as options from other states, and that really gave me some hope, because short of the limited license, we have those teachers, and we have them probably in every school system in North Carolina that have done a fantastic job. And, frankly, we have to, when someone has come in lateral entry and they sit with me and they have asked me the question 100 times, am I going to be seen as less because I have a lateral entry license? And I'm like, no, you're going to complete all the requirements just about like everybody else. A little bit differently, but you will come out on the other end. So I really, it's not instead of the test. It would be if somebody's missing it by 1 or 2 points. And we all know that some of these people have had to take these tests 3 or 4 times and keep missing it by 1 point.
So I think one thing we can put here is, in parentheses or something, Kim, something about one use. This could be one use or one way to use them, not all the ways.
This is Sarah Koenig. May I ask a question if this was included? And I know we had pretty good discussions about this. Was it notated that the state would need to, to review MCs against micro-credentials against criteria, kind of like a oversee to ensure the process?
We had talked about that, and some of the language so under recommendation, I think we could have a second bullet that said that there would need to be
there is a second bullet on what was sent to us.
Okay, sorry.
There we go.
There it is. Sorry. Thank you, Vivian.
Okay, great.
Is that what you're talking about, Sarah?
Yes, ma'am, exactly.
All right, great.
And I think that needs to be clarified under the con, where it says wide range of micro-credentials available. Are we talking about a wide range of quality of micro-credentials? Because that sounds like that could be a pro if there's a wide range of them available.
So what's your suggestion?
So under the cons, is it a wide range of quality or lack? I don't know, but wide range meaning what? Like,
this is Sarah. I know we discussed the concern of educators possibly, quote, for example, cherry picking certain ones. I know that was brought up in some of the discussions I was a part of.
I can't see the cons on this list because it's not.
Yeah, it says wide range of micro-credentials available. To me, that almost sounds like a pro if you just read that and didn't hear the discussion. So right. Is that a wide range of quality micro-credentials or lack of, or I don't know. I think there needs to be some qualifier there.
Yeah,
I think quality is the word that's where the con comes in.
Yeah, I think that kind of ties into the second bullet on the recommendation, is that there's so many out there. We need to make sure that they're standardized, and everyone is basically using the same micro credentials, because there is such a wide range to choose from.
Yeah,
exactly. That helps. Thank you.
100%.
Thank you. All right, anything else for micro-credentialing? All right, so once again, the group that is here that is voting. We'll vote, and then at the end, we'll decide what we want to do for the rest of the individuals that could not be here today. So,
Dr. Bullock, this is Jeff Coltrane.
yes.
Sorry, my microphone wasn't working. I'm late to the discussion, but just wanted to share some thoughts on the micro-credentials. So, you know, as I understand micro-credentials, first off, I don't think we really have a set of micro-credentials that can be applied to beginning teachers or early career teachers, or, you know, what we would expect teachers in license 1, 2, and 3 to know and be able to do yet, that I'm aware of. And so this feels like an extremely new but promising area. So unlike the other areas that we're talking about, student surveys, licensure exams, you know, even some of the, if we go back to the final exams and the analysis of student work and other things that have been developed, there's really not something for us to point to in terms of micro-credentials yet. So to me, this feels like something that is promising, but I don't know that we should hang our hat on. And in essence, as I understand a micro-credential, it's really just a demonstration of a competency. And so there may be some PD you get, there may be some training, but it's really that you can demonstrate a very specific competency that you have. So I think if we think about it that way, there may be other avenues to explore, you know, as a possibility up until we get micro-credentials. But that would be my one hesitation, I think, on micro-credentials. I've always thought micro-credentials would be great for helping to develop very specific skills, but not necessarily for the broad range of skills that we expect beginning teachers to have. But that's my 2 cents. So,
is there something, Jeff, that you want to add on here under any of our areas that you think captures what you said?
I mean, I think in the cons, I would say that, you know, do we actually have micro-credentials available in the skills that we expect beginning teachers to have? And I think, to your point, Anne, I don't know that we do. So I think that's, you know, this might be a great tool for, you know, learning in specific areas or in the advanced teaching roles that are envisioned, particularly in growing leadership skills or mentoring skills. But are they right for, you know, really breaking down all of the skills we expect beginning teachers to have, or that that our EPPs would teach in their traditional program? Is that the right use of these? So that I would put as a con. So maybe it's, you know, do we think do we have micro-credentials available in those very specific skills that we expect beginning teachers to have? And is it feasible to actually have micro-credentials in all of those areas? That would be so maybe that would go in as a con.
Yeah, that'd be great. Kim, can you add that, please?
Jeff, as a flip side to that, or as another way of thinking about it, this is Jill. What the work we're doing here is pretty long. It is going to play out over a fairly extended time period. I'm talking like a couple of years. And assuming that the work on micro-credentials continues, which I think it will, can we still have in our mind the possibility that that at some point in time, micro-credentials might be available in a systematic way to be used here? Because I could also see them being used for license 4.
Yes, I agree with you, Jill. Yeah, I think we could, but I don't think we're there yet. Like we are with the other things we're discussing, licensure exams, student surveys. You know, there are proven, developed, tested models for all of those, but we don't have that yet for micro-credentials, is my thinking.
I just hate to rule them out in the long run.
Oh, agreed. No. I think we need to keep them in as the long run, but I think in terms of you know, if we're thinking about what would be implemented sooner rather than later, I don't feel like micro-credentials would be on that sooner list, if that makes sense.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah, completely agree with you, Jill.
Jeff, could you
So, Jill.
repeat your con? Was it a con that you were wanting me to add, Ann?
Yes. Do we have micro-credentials available in specific skill areas and all of the licensure areas? Is that correct, Jeff?
That's correct. And I know there are other subcommittees that are trying to break down the NISA's rubric and sort of those skills that we expect teachers to see early on, and think about ways to better look at that. And so those things could be coming, but I think, you know, to this, I don't know that we have micro-credentials in those areas. There may be, I could be wrong, but
you know, we could also develop specific micro-credentials in areas to match things up. I mean, that's possible too. We could be very targeted in getting that work done.
Yeah, I mean, there is no way that anybody, this is my opinion, that anyone, any DPI, anyone, and not that it would be DPI in particular, but that anyone could create the hundreds and thousands of specific skill micro-credentials that we would need that would be equivalent to an EPP program, right? So the way I vision this, and this is just my opinion, is that we would choose, or someone would choose, something that is tangible and palatable in one of these higher levels of this model, where they try something and use micro-credentialing as an option and see how it works. I mean, this is my, if I were running the world, what I would do, not trying to influence anybody.
And just to add to that, I mean, there's still so much work that has to be done regarding where micro-credentials go in the model, you know, vendors, selection. I mean, there's a lot to that. So, you know, I think everybody's made some valid points.
And we've talked about the development of specific micro-credentials as an opening for EPPs for sure. And, the meeting that we're going to have in December to dig in a little harder on micro-credentials and learn a little bit more may help us with this too.
Yeah.
In terms of where they fit in.
So what I've heard from the people that have spoken about this, in addition to what's written here, is these micro-credentialing could be something we could see as a possibility at some point in this model, but one, we don't have it yet, and two, it would have to be developed. So.
And the way I view it, this is Kim again at Catawba. If I vote yes today, I view it as I want it staying on the list, as it's up for consideration for us to hone in and make it the way it should be.
Yes.
If I say no, it means I want it off the list. I'm not even willing to consider it. Is that a fair bet?
That is correct. Yes with considerations, or no, not at all. This is not viable.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So again, remember, this is just a broad swipe of, we want to keep these things on the list. I think that's a great way to say it. So Kim, if you could bring up the poll for micro-credentialing, that would be great.
Is the poll out there yet?
Yes, the poll's been open for 2 minutes.
I didn't get the alert this time.
It should show up in your sidebar, and you may need to click where it says polling. There's a little caret there. You may need to click that if that box isn't opened up for you.
Thanks, Maureen.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so it says polling is ended. Okay, so now we have 6 people not answering. So we have 16 yes to 0 no. So thank you. All right, so let's move on to the third one. Thank y'all for that. Licensure exams. We have pros, cons, questions, and recommendations. I'll open the floor up for anything that we feel like needs to be added or anything anyone would like to say. Again, the vote will be, do we keep it on the list, or do we take it with the considerations, or take it off the list? Anyone have any comments about licensure exams that's not on here?
I guess this is Vivian. My question now about if this is not going to include EdTPA, because we've all been told it is a licensure exam, that needs to be made clear. And again, I don't think it's clear in the number 5 or 6 where it's portfolio / performance assessment, because those are 2 very different things to me. So where is the EdTPA would be my question.
So would we want to put that under a question, Vivian, or under a recommendation?
Or we can make it clear that it's included under portfolio and performance tests. I have an issue with the word performance test. I mean, they're assessments. They're way more than tests. And if we're worried about micro-credentials showing skills, this is a way for people to definitely demonstrate skills. So I don't feel like it's well represented in number 6, so we can tackle it there. But I would like it noted that we're not including it under licensure tests, if that's what we're doing. Okay. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Yes. Yeah, it does. It does to me. Yeah.
So Vivian, and it does the EdTPA show up in a later one? Is that what you're saying? The performance assessment?
It shows up at the bottom, but it is barely mentioned in that. It's more, okay, pros and cons are more about just portfolios, in my opinion.
Licensure exams, we're strictly talking about praxis.
Yeah.
Right. Traditional licensure exams.
I don't know that it needs to go under recommendations. I think it needs to go up there under number 3, licensure exams, parentheses, content, not including EdTPA, because all of those things do not include EdTPA. I don't think that's a recommendation, in my opinion. I think it's a clarification.
Let's put it both places. Let's leave it there just again, okay, and put it up there on the top as well under the title, Kim, please.
I'm sorry, Ann, I missed that.
Under 3, licensure exams, parentheses, content, open that parentheses up and put content, comma, not EdTPA, PPAT.
I'm just going to put pedagogy exam.
No, that's not right. That's different, because those are considered, some of them do have pedagogy on the test. Foundations of Reading has pedagogy.
But that's still considered a content exam.
It is in this list. not EdTPA, PPAT. Thank you. All right, given this, question is, anything else? Thank you, Vivian, for reminding and adding that. And thank you, Kim, for writing it in there. Anything else on licensure exams?
And it's Vivian again, just one thing of all of these, you know, we've not mentioned cost as a pro or a con. I'm assuming that's understood, that
we can add it.
Surveys cost districts in the state to produce. Students have to pay for licensure exams. I mean, there's cost involved in every one of these things.
So maybe we could put that at the top in our opening of some of that you know, that there are costs to each of these.
And if student achievement and what's best for students is our focus, then, you know, we would hope cost wouldn't be the determining factor, but we know it is a big factor when it takes, you know, 5 years to get a budget. So
this is Sarah. I have to concur pretty heavily with Vivian that should, I'm glad she brought that up and putting it at the top so it's notated.
Okay, so I'm going to say something like, or we're going to say something like cost, there is cost to each of these. It could be to the district and or to the candidate, right?
Or the state.
Or the state. Okay, yeah.
I agree with those comments as well. I think whatever goes in this model has got to be able to be sustainable, you know, budget-wise. That's very important. We don't want to be flip-flopping back and forth and adding a measure, taking one off just because of cost. It's got to be guaranteed to be funded before it goes in this model.
Right. Thanks, Kim, for adding that. All right, so back to licensure test. Anything else from anyone else? All right, again, do we want to keep it on the list? Yes, with considerations, or no?
And this is Connie. I think, yes, we need to keep it on the list because I don't think we're trying to do away with the test by any means. I think there are people that can take the test and they're fine, but I think the whole point of this is developing different alternatives for those that, as someone stated earlier, that may miss the test by 1 or 2 points. So I think we need to keep it. I don't think we're trying to do away with it. I just think we're trying to have different ways to help people with licensure.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Locklear. Do we need to add under recommendations, C, comment, and micro-credentialing? Regarding possible...
I think to be fair,
could you repeat that, please?
This is Vivian. I was saying to be fair, I think that...
Did you say, just say yes or no because you're breaking up?
Yes.
Yes. Is added or no? Okay, thank you.
Hey, this is Hoffman. I can't hear the entire conversation, so I'm kind of consuming it through the captions. But I have a question about the cut score for the practice. Is that something that could be considered?
We could write that in here. There's a whole process around cut scores, and Tom could spend the rest of our meeting talking about that if you want him to. Tom, do you want to give like a, I don't know if you're still here, do you want to give like a two-sentence summary of how cut scores are determined? Is he still here?
I am here. I'm sorry. I couldn't find my unmute button. So cut scores are largely derived from the vendor who uses a national norming process to determine kind of I'm not sure if it's the mean or some standardized deviation from the mean, but generally they are determined from a national sample, and then those recommendations are sent out to the participating states, where the state then has the opportunity, and then they provide information on things like, okay, so here's the national norm average, and then here's one standard deviation above that average, and here's one standard deviation below that average. And then states kind of make the determination of whether they want to be, in the middle, or if they want to be on the higher end of the rigor around, the cut score around the test, or if they want to be a little lower. So that's generally where it comes from. It's just information provided by the vendor on the scoring the scoring distribution from their national norms.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
But we could add it. I think we can still add it as a recommendation, but I wanted to have Tom respond to that. So thanks, Tom. That's helpful. So in the recommendation, the question or the I think it's a question for consideration, Kim. Could cut scores or cut scores be revisited? Is that correct? Go with it. All right, so let's bring up the poll for licensure test. Do we keep it on the list? Yes, with considerations? No.
I did. Dr. Bullock, I also wanted to add that some people had to leave the meeting and they let me know what their votes are.
Okay, thank you. You should be voting. The poll is up. So if you don't see the poll, I'm just alerting. Okay, Kim. All right, so this is 13-1.
I wanted to note that it's actually 15-1.
Okay.
And then also student surveys, someone joined late, so it's 8-7.
Okay,
So
all right, thank you.
Yes.
All right, so observational measures. We have pros, cons, and Kim, can you scroll down some, please? Quality for consideration and recommendations. So anything to add here? I'm not hearing anything. Are we ready to determine if we're going to keep this on the list? Yes with considerations or no? Anyone opposed to us moving forward with that?
This is Sarah. I just want to make a notation when looking back at the SharePoint. I noticed that one of the challenges listed that I don't see on our notes that it required significant initial and ongoing training for the observers to rate the validity and reliability, which often, it says often does not occur. Can we just that a little bit?
It's kind of hinted on under the first recommendation, but maybe could be maybe amended to say ongoing.
Yes, they're elaborated.
Yeah.
100%.
But I think you're exactly right. I think this is just like the micro credentials. There's going to have to be a lot of further action steps before this could be fully included in the model. A lot of thought and next steps.
Okay, is that in our? Okay, we're adding that in. Okay. Anything else?
And I probably should have thought to ask this in prior meetings when we were talking about this, but does this include, would this include the LEA IHE form that's filled out for initial licensure for our teachers, since that is, I mean, it's based on an entire semester, not a singular observation, but it is very much people's observations of the students' participation in the classroom. So is that included in this or not?
Does anybody have an answer for that?
Kimberly, are you talking about the certification of teaching capacity form?
Yes.
Right, so that was based on NESIS, or maybe even the document before that.
Okay.
And we still use that, but it doesn't go anywhere. It used to have to be sent to DPI, but it's not anymore. But most of us still use it and make sure everything is marked met. But it comes from 4 or more individual observations. So It's not a one-time thing.
Right, and that's why I was asking if that's included in it. Okay, all right.
I think something like that could be considered and included in at some point in the model. So definitely would be a good starting place as a resource to look at for further discussion.
Yeah, that CPAST in there is what we use at our second and final observation at East Carolina, and other IHEs, a few other IHEs use it. And it's out of the Ohio State University. It has validity and reliability. You have to be trained once a year to continue using it. All of that's online. It's pretty rigorous and easy to do.
This is Connie. I have a question, and maybe I don't have clarity here, but going back thinking about this and the situation that we're in now in public education, we're talking about the training that has to take place for this so that it is rigorous enough. The other piece is, or my concern is, where are we going to get the individuals to do this training? I mean, right now in some districts we're scrapped to get individuals to cover classes. So I'm just wondering about, I know this is long term and it may be years down the road, but in the direction that we're going now, we just don't have the capacity in many districts to do this.
That's a great point, Connie. Maybe, Anne, at the top where you had it in terms of cost, we put monetary and human capital costs because there are
Okay,
both.
that's good. Yeah. And I hear all of that, but I hope we're not I don't want us to create I don't want us to make recommendations based. Connie, I hear you. Let me say that to start. And we know this is a reality, but we also have coaches in all these schools, things like that, people like that. So there would have to be absolute training, but would that improve learning for children? It could, right? If we had everyone trained on observation instruments in the state and there was clear, reliable, and valid, that could help. I mean, that's just my hope, right? Talking from hope now.
Yes, well, I see it as a tool that we can use. I'm just wondering, we do have academic coaches in our schools, but, I'm just thinking about the climate that we're in right now. And I know this is long term, but do we have the capacity to support that? And will we be able to train them so everybody across the state will have that same level of training? So when someone goes in that classroom, if I go in a classroom in Robinson County to observe and I go in a classroom in Wake County, are we still receiving that same type of feedback?
Right. This would be a big lift. And maybe do we say that in there? Do we say what you're saying in here, or do we need to add it? We have it up there. Kim added it. Yeah. So I do think that this could be a long play one and not a short play one, right? If it passes.
This is Sarah. I want to add maybe a consideration, of course, at the committee's discretion, but there's a lot of lack in trust due to there's little variability in the ratings, and then you have to add in cultural norms against providing critical feedback. Should something like that be included just as a notation?
We could. Yeah. So would you conclude that under, I think we include the other one under recommendations, Sarah. So I think we would add it there maybe.
Okay.
That sound good? So you might want to summarize it for Kim since she's trying to do 3 things at once for us.
Right, sorry.
Just to notate that there is shown that there's a little variability in teacher ratings with regards because of time pressures on those doing them, and
do you want this under cons?
Well, it's certainly a challenge, and in part for the cultural norms against providing critical feedback.
Yeah.
This is Tom. If I may offer a suggestion, I think the statement that you're making is true. I don't think it's necessary to provide a rationale for why that statement is true. And we don't know, like you, I have a lot of opinions on what might be causing that phenomenon, but it simply is enough that it is, that it exists. I don't think we need to try to explain why it exists necessarily.
Okay, thanks. All right. Anything else? All right. Let's pull this one up. Again, do we keep it on the list? Yes, with these considerations, or no? The polling has started. Okay, Kim, you want to bring that up? Okay. So we have 12-2 for this recommendation. All right, let's thank you all. Let's move to the next one. So we have measures of student learning. We have, again, pros, cons, questions for consideration, and recommendations. So anything anyone would like to add or question on this? I'm not hearing.
Could you just maybe scroll up so we could see? I want to read the rest of the recommendation part. Thank you.
Yeah, great.
Is this code for EBOS, or are we talking about all kinds of measures?
I think it could include EVOS, but also for those teachers who don't have EVOS, it may be some other form of achievement measurement.
Do we need to add anything to clarify that in here, Vivian?
I was just thinking it says comprehensive measure. If it's teacher-made tests, or, I mean, it could be formative unless we're just talking about a comprehensive measure. That's what kind of threw me there. Because that fourth bullet under cons said if teacher-generated tests, they're not always the same, which I agree with, but some of it could be formative. Like, could there be a half-year measure and a final year measure? That was my only question. I don't think I was in that group.
Well, I would think that, let's see, do we have anything? I would like for us to add something about that the measure should be reliable and valid. It's not in here.
Definitely.
Because it could be, I mean, I'm just thinking, like, somebody could say, well, what about these district quarterly tests that we give, or whatever, whatever they give, or these standardized performance-based assessments that we give. And what about those at the district level? Well, if they have reliability and validity at a certain level, could those be used, right? Anything else on this one? Okay, hearing nothing, we'll move to the poll. Again, keep it on the list, yes with considerations, or no. The poll is open. Kim, I haven't seen the poll has ended. Has it ended?
Almost. We have 6 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right, now it's ended. You can bring it up. Thank you very much. 12 to 1. right, our last area, portfolio performance assessment. I think that's what that says. It needs to say performance assessment. We need to change, I think we need to change test to assessment, and not have it say test on the title.
Agreed.
Okay, so Kim, could you make that? Thank you. I'll take that change to on the title under sits and take out test and put assessment or assessments, maybe. It'd be more than one. We have pros, cons, questions for considerations, recommendations. Can you just scroll up just slightly? Is there anything below that third bullet?
That's the end.
Okay, thank you. Would we like for this to have, we need to, for that last bullet, put EdTPA/PPAT for the under recommendations, the last bullet. T, yeah, thank you.
I would like something more under the pros.
Okay.
It's not just about collecting artifacts. I mean, those have significant videotapes that actually demonstrate. I mean, we're talking about micro-credentials, having people demonstrate a competency. EdTPA and PPAT do that well.
Is that what you'd like the pro to say?
So they demonstrate competency because you have to videotape, you have to write and critique what you've done, show how you're going to improve, explain how you're going to improve. I mean, they're more than just a collection of artifacts.
Okay, anything else? Sorry. Anything else here? Okay. Kim, you can bring up the poll, please. Again, we're voting to, if we keep this on the list, yes with considerations or no. The poll is live, so please make sure you can see it. All right, the polling has ended. Okay, so we have 13-1. All right.
So I just want to let you know it's 15-1 because the two
Okay.
people that left. Yes.
All right. Still, if we count them or not, it's still a passing measure by a large amount. So, the thing I brought up at the beginning was that there's nowhere on here that, does anyone remember anywhere on here where we talk about master's degrees?
Yes, I do. It's Connie.
It's on here, Connie. You saw it?
No, I didn't see it. I said I remember us talking about it.
Okay. So one of the measures that we haven't talked about as an option is a master's degree. That I mean, we've talked about it, but it's not on our measures list. And I was wondering if anyone's had thoughts on, because there's been conversation in this committee, this is my interpretation of what I remember, so feel free to correct or add or delete things I'm saying, is that, you know, some people, like I know that when you have a master's degree, that there are a set of degree outcomes and specific course outcomes that are many times met at the master's level through things like performance-based assessments, alternative assessments that are reliable and valid. Okay, not in every master's degree, but in some master's degrees, those are true things. Everyone has course outcomes and program outcomes, but many of there could be set assessments in the program that are reliable and valid. And so where would those fit into this? Where could those fit into this measure is something I've been thinking about. So does anyone have comments about master's degrees or in relation to a measure? Anyone else? Or it's just something I've been thinking about.
And this is Connie again. If I'm not mistaken, we also talked about those individuals that may have a high GPA in that content area. And I don't know if that's listed as well, but I do remember having some conversation as it relates to that as well as the master's degree.
Okay. So I'm wondering if we should have kind of like other things that were discussed without it being like part of the recommendation, right? But that were neither approved nor denied, kind of thing, just like our brainstorm list, like high GPA, master's degrees.
I mean, this is Tamika. I would agree that probably we have an additional list of things to consider outside of the recommendations. I would also just note back to your previous question, like a master's or advanced degree would maybe fit well in a total portfolio package, the other recommendation we talked about, because there could be coursework related to the teaching practice that an educator might want to include in a portfolio. So I would also just, it could be referenced there as well.
That's good. Thank you. Yeah, and we could say something in our little mini report here about these are other things that have been discussed during the committee meetings that, but we focused on these specific measures, but these would be other things that we just discussed, because we don't want to lose sight of those either, right? Like, would a high GPA count somewhere? And these are things I think will also come out from other committees. You know, could there be parts of a master's degree that could fit with a portfolio, or could a master's degree be on a list, right? And so we'll whip up some language to add some things. And then if anybody thinks of anything else that they think we ought to add that we've talked about or something you've been thinking about, we could also do those.
Hey, Anne, this is Kim Creamer again. With the master's degree, speaking as someone who, when I finished my PhD, ended up pregnant with twins in the middle and let my license lapse in North Carolina, and was unable to renew my license at that time because my coursework then fell like 1 year out of the date. I think that stuck in my mind. So my point is, there's a difference between a master's, like I think there needs to be a date on those credentials. I get why North Carolina said they had that date. just because a master's degree, when did you get it? Do you know what I'm saying? Because what you studied 15 years ago, for example, with reading instruction might be very different than someone who just got their master's degree a couple years ago. So I don't know if that needs to be some type of consideration in there.
Yeah, we can put that in there.
Yeah, this is Hoffman. I also think there should be some type of consideration for teachers who are coming in from out of state with licenses. You know, like I have a teacher now who is licensed in 2 other states, but is having a heck of a time trying to pass the praxis for here. And she is absolutely one of my very, very best teachers.
Okay, we'll add that too, Deborah. Thank you for that.
That's exactly one of the problems that we're trying to solve with this system. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, yeah. And I think I will say it in like part of our other pieces, but I think that's also part of what Jill said, like that's part of the bigger picture here. And so I think the more that's put in these different mini reports for the different committees is really good. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Okay, so I'm going to recommend that we do this. We have our people that attended today votes, right? So what we've done in the past with anything that we've created is we have sent it out to the whole committee for feedback, right? So like just like we did last time with all the pros, cons, questions, considerations, we could send this out and report what happened in the meeting today and give people a chance to react to it, particularly people that couldn't come today for whatever reason. And so any thoughts on doing that or anything else, any considerations?
So I think that would be good. I also think there's a way to poll people who couldn't attend to ask them to weigh in. So I think either of those methods would work to have a full consensus of the committee.
Okay, yeah, we could ask them if they wanted to, we could ask them something like, you know, like, are you in agreement with any of these or not in agreement? Please let us, if you're not in agreement with moving forward any of these or whatever, we could ask them that to see. So I think that would be, Kim will come up with some good language for us. So just to make sure. And also to give awareness of what happened, right? All right. Anything else for the good of the committee? So what we're going to do is we're going to, the royal we of Kim and Wesley and I are going to put together, you know, make sure this report, or I'm calling it a report, but you can call it whatever you want, and put these votes in here and then send that out with awareness to the committee at large. We'll give them, you know, some time to do that, not counting Thanksgiving week. And then we can bring that back and make sure that, and then we'll send something out to the whole committee. So we'll have a two-phase process. Send something out to the committee asking for any kind of feedback if you weren't here. Then we'll send something out to the whole committee with kind of our final draft. How does that, so that's kind of be our plan. So if you don't have any, if you have any input to that plan, let me know or let us know now.
And I'd just say that the, I think the vote's important to, you know, bring consensus from the subcommittee, but the working document that we reviewed today, I think is definitely the most important. And, you know, I still think it'll continue to be a working document as, you know, we have ideas and concerns or suggestions as we move forward, but definitely provides, you know, input on the subcommittee and kind of summarizes our previous months of discussion. So it'll be some great information as we move forward, as we start to work together as different subcommittees and getting this draft together.
Yeah. So, all right. Thank you. So Wesley, I'm going to turn it back over to you to close us out.
All right. A lot of great discussion this morning, a lot of great ideas, great input from different folks. And I think we see from our discussion that some of these things are it's going to take a lot of time. And I agree with a lot of the comments about resources. If we're working in the public school, I know we're strapped with employees. Everybody's loads are heavy. And we got to make sure that as we move forward, whatever we put in here is definitely funded with appropriate resources and appropriate support in place. And I know that's way down the road, and our legislators, I guess, will be making that final determination of what happens. But at the same time, we got to express that viewpoint. Once again, just thank you for being a part of our subcommittee today, taking time out of your schedules. We hope everyone has a great break, great Thanksgiving. If you have any additional concerns or comments, definitely reach out to Ann and myself. So I guess at this time, I'll entertain a motion that we adjourn.
This is Connie. I'll make a motion for us to adjourn. But before I do, I want to say thank you to Wesley and to Ann for your leadership on this committee.
This is Sarah. Second that motion to adjourn.
All right. Thank you, guys. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right. Any opposed? All right. Have a blessed Thanksgiving. Enjoy time with your friends and family. And just reflect on all the great things we have to be thankful for. And hope everyone has a great rest of your Friday morning and afternoon. Take care.
Same to you. Goodbye.
Wesley.